We're so happy to see you all, and we hope you have a fun day today.
We're happy to see you.
Okay, we're in Unit 1, and first time we're going to introduce the judges, and then I will read the question. My name is Fran Chesler. I'm an attorney, and I work for a real estate developer, so I have a great interest in property rights. And to my left is?
I'm Brad Siegel. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Northern Highlands School District, which is in Bergen County.
And to my?
Good morning, Bayonne High School. Chris Camposano, Princeton University, the Director of the Teacher Preparation Program. Nice to have you here.
So
We'd just like to introduce ourselves.
Good morning. My name is Bilal Kwan.
Good morning, my name is Stephanie Vasquez. Good morning, my name is Alexandria Lupa. Good morning, my name is Elizabeth Babanka.
Good morning, my name is Joseph Bizarogi.
Good morning, my name is David Skalkowski, and we're here today with our teachers, Ms. Luca and Mr. Fresh.
Great. Good morning. And once again, thank you again for participating. Your question is, could everyone hear me?
Yes.
But if at any time any of the judges are asking questions and we're not speaking loud enough, just please make sure you ask us to speak up. What are the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system? That's Unit 1. Your question is, how would you distinguish between a government with a constitution and a constitutional government? Why is that distinction important? And subsumed in that question are, why is a constitution considered a higher law? What are the major characteristics of a higher law? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of a written constitution? Right.
When distinguishing between a constitution and a constitutional government, Justice Sandra O'Connor elaborated that a constitution establishes the fundamental ground rules for government. In a constitutional government, the powers and limitations of government are defined by a constitution, whether or not it is written. The form of government, whether it is a republic or a democracy, is irrelevant. What matters is the parameters set in any constitution that provides a mechanism that limits the authority of government. That is what true constitutional government is. However, a constitutional government does not always entitle the concepts of a constitution. Justice Anthony Kennedy affirmed that there are constitutions all over the world, but they are not worth the paper they are written on because the people do not care about it.
So the distinction between the two ideas are good. And just Anthony Kennedy would again argue, it takes good faith to make the Constitution work. There must be willingness of each branch of government to recognize the responsibility of others. Constitutional government needs to be driven, not just by the idea of separation of powers, but by the dedication of those who support it. What else is the purpose of having a constitution that the constitutional that people do not care or even worry about it? We saw this idea in Nazi Germany, where their constitution didn't maintain checks and balances or even maintain separation of powers. If there were no faith in a constitution, no constitutional government would ever follow the fundamental rules declared in it.
Higher laws are above all men, regardless of position. A constitution is considered a higher law because all government declarations and legislative laws must be in unison with the Constitution. Aristotle notes, the laws are and ought to be relative to the Constitution, not the Constitution to the laws. The purpose of making a Constitution a higher law reasserts the protection of citizens' rights and individual liberties. John Locke asserted these rights in his natural rights philosophy, was stated that higher laws is superior to any natural or divine law made by man.
The characteristic of a higher law includes the rule of law. Professor Tom Bell of Chapman University argued, rule of law means equality before the law. No one can rise above it. In United States versus Richard Nixon, the Supreme Court justified that no individual was above the Constitution, not even the President. Chief Justice John Marshall asserted, all laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. As a higher law, all laws and decrees of government must go hand in hand with the ideas described in the Constitution.
It is significantly important to understand that a written constitution prohibits arbitrary interpretation and modification of inalienable rights. Scott Bradley, an expert on American government, stated, the primary purpose of the Constitution is to protect the people in their God-given inalienable rights. A written constitution renders the foundation of government. It sets boundaries in which our government can act and operate, and it allows higher laws to be public and declared. Recently, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was brought to Iran's parliament for a hearing to decide if he had violated their constitution. This event confirms how written constitutions provide safety barriers between the people and abusive government, and the necessity for constitutional governments to protect their fundamental rules.
Written constitutions have many advantages. They do come with disadvantages. In Federalist number 84, Alexander Hamilton argued that implementing a written Bill of Rights to the Constitution would wrongly be interpreted later as the only rights that individuals had. Hamilton stated, "Why declare that things shall not be done in which there is no power to do? Great Britain has an unwritten constitution that has served well for centuries. Attempting to form a written constitution will result in practical problems with major issues of what to include or leave out. For countries like Great Britain, implementing a written constitution is simply unnecessary because their system has already been affected with precedents and common law."
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And now we will ask you some questions. Brad Siegel is going to ask the first question.
How would you distinguish between a direct and representative democracy?
Well, when you talk about a direct democracy, it's important to remember that whenever you talk about democracy at all, that it needs the involvement of the people. And Justice Stephen Breyer's book, Active Liberty, discusses the critical role of the citizen in the society, especially if it's a direct democracy. It's direct, the individuals have a direct say as to how legislation should be passed and how legislation should refer back to the people.
Yes, direct democracy is definitely more classical republicanism than representative democracy, because people play like such a much more active role in government. It was kind of like that in ancient Greece. It was a direct democracy there where the people actually had complete rule in the government.
In addition to what Joseph said, Andrew Johnson said that a republic needs virtue, intelligence, and cooperation of its citizens for it to work. So for the people to have direct democracy, you need to have intelligence about their government.
Also, direct democracy involves the people, and when people are involved, it helps government realize what they need to do right and what they need to do wrong.
If I could just add on to what the law says, the idea of a representative democracy, I think, is something that we have more of now. We allow our representatives to take our democratic ideals. And again, just as Breyer noted in his book, Active Liberty, that these democratic ideals are relevant now, just like they were 200 years ago, and just like they were 2,000 years ago. So it's important that when we have representatives representing us, that we keep on to the democratic ideals that are to keep the interest of the people, but to also keep the provisions of community.
Very good. Okay, I want to follow that up, and I want you to think deeply about this question and whether you agree or disagree, and why you agree or disagree, and then I want to hear some evidence as to your position on this question. But our founding fathers believed that direct democracy was more likely to ignore constitutional limits than representative democracy. Do you agree or disagree with that? And why? And what evidence can you offer to support your position?
Can you state the question, please?
The question is, the founding fathers believed that direct democracy was more likely to ignore constitutional limits than representative democracy.
I agree with founders when they say that because direct democracy is more towards the citizens. Many citizens today don't understand what's going on in our government, but when we elect officials to represent us, the officials have more knowledge about what's going on.
I would actually disagree with my colleague. I think that it's important when we talk about direct democracy that these ideas are relevant to the people, and you need the participants to understand the Constitution, but the participants have to agree with the Constitution. The two ideas need to combine together so that there is an equal balance of powers, but at the same time of interest of the people.
I agree with my comment member Alexandra, because a direct democracy is going to be closer to the people. They don't have to have as much limits because the people may trust them more because they are so close and they know what they're talking about.
I would agree with Alex and Elizabeth. I would say that direct democracy would involve, would need more intelligence from its citizens. As John Adams said, in order for a democracy to work, you need the intelligence of the citizens.
But if I could just add, John F. Kennedy also said that democracy is the final achievement. But to get to a democracy, it takes continual work. The problem is, with the Constitution, and I think this is why I agree so strongly with the founders, is that they gave us the ability to amend our Constitution to meet our modern needs. So I think that's something really important, because if the Constitution cannot meet the needs of its citizens, the people won't want to participate. And if you take a look at a recent Gallup tracking poll, less than 1/3 of American citizens actually want to partake in elections. They don't want to partake in primaries or caucuses, and it's really been ineffective.
I would disagree. I believe that the people, the leaders of our society know more about the Constitution and specialize in the Constitution. So the people, we.
I think what she's trying to say is that we should give our support and trust to the people we've elected to represent us in our government. We've elected them, so they clearly know what we want.
Can I follow that up?
Sure.
There seems to be a general consensus about the knowledge, intelligence of the general populace. So what evidence do you offer, and if it's the lack of perhaps engaging in the democratic process, what might it, contribute to that?
Well, actually, if you take a look, really, there are more people stepping away from voting, which is totally an idea of democracy and direct democracy. People partaking in legislation and referendum. But I think the American people, more than any other country, have gone to different activities that have assisted them in partaking in government.
Yes, I agree with David. We have several other ways, such as protesting and having petitions in assembly. An example is today would be the Tea Party, where people protest the assembly against high taxes and big government.
Back to your original question, you said that you want to know why we don't believe that people have intelligence about our government. Our group took a poll around their town, and 75% of the people we polled didn't know who the vice president was, and yet they said they didn't trust government. And as Karen Holt said,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Great job.